Welcome back to Secondhand Sellers, where we talk about all things thrift, resale, and secondhand. I'm Sarah, and as you can see, Clayton is on hiatus this week. He had some things in his personal life he had to attend to, so we have Hannah back, my business partner and sister from Keeled Overstock, as my co-host this week. Thank you, Hannah, for joining us. I'm sure Clayton appreciates it too. So we're going to talk a bit about, it's going to be a similar format as usual, but we're going to talk a bit about our experience as siblings in business. And we might touch on a little bit of opinions on how our business is currently going and that kind of thing too. So I just kind of prepared a few questions here. So what do you think is going well with our business? We'll just start over with a quick business overview.
Why don't you start? I'm drawing a blank.
So I think, it has grown since we started, and I think, I think we've seen that upward trajectory, and it hit a couple of small bumps, like towards the beginning of this year.
That's pretty typical for pretty much everything.
Yeah, it followed most sales cycles, I think. January and February are post-holiday are kind of known as lower months. And I know our business, we did experience that.
Mm-hmm.
I think Clayton said he didn't really. And I don't know if that has to do with the things he's selling.
Could be.
He may be selling some of the more practical things.
Clothing and whatnot.
Yeah, things that maybe we don't carry as much.
Stuff is a little bit more specialty. That's
a lot of our stuff is more specialty. As you guys probably know if you've followed us for any length of time or if you've ever checked out our stores. And so we did have that lull, I think, in January and February. But or at least I've noticed, and maybe you have too.
Mid-March really started to pick up.
This last couple weeks, I think, has been pretty good. And I talked about previously how we've kind of trended towards getting some higher value items and not as many small. And we are seeing quite a few of those higher value items sell. And I think, have you looked at the numbers at all?
No.
I don't have them in front of me here, but I feel like we're getting to the point where we're about at our higher months average, but we're selling fewer things but higher value ones more regularly, which is really cool. And I think that's a positive, and I'm hoping to see that go up. And we may introduce some of those smaller items back in, depending on the trends we see.
Yeah, quite a few of the recent stuff are...
What do you think the average of things we sold recently was?
So if we go back just a couple weeks, not even a couple weeks, 30, 59, 60, 25, 17, 35.
So we probably got a $30 to $40 average
40,
about on things that we're selling currently, which I am pretty happy with. How do you feel? Do you like that, or?
The cheesy saying, work smarter, not harder. Getting higher valued items, you make more than selling like 10 $7 items. You sell 2 $50 items, you're already ahead.
Yeah, and we don't have to pack as many things either, which is nice. And we've kind of hit a situation where we recently had to buy bubble wrap again, where because we sell so many breakables, our packaging materials had gotten really low, which is good. But if we were selling a bunch of low value breakables, we'd really have a problem there. So I think that's been going well. Oh, we have a kitty. We have a kitty visitor this time. Anyway, so I think those things are going well. Do you have anything else? Have you gotten into your groove as a photographer? You can speak a little bit more about the photography part of it.
So we're coming up a year next month.
Yep. Next
really
mid-April, I think.
Got into the groove of just snapping pictures and then taking it into Photoshop and just editing. I think I edited, technically it was one item. I think it might have been the dough mixer. I had about 20 some pictures and I got those done in 5 minutes. Just click and adjusting it. So
you've kind of gotten your routine down so that you can do things quickly. That's helpful. Can you think of anything else that you feel like is going particularly well? Like I said, we're close. We might do an episode where we talk about our year in review, maybe next month. But
finding items, good items. seems to be an upward trend as well.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, could just be being at the right place at the right time, but
It could be. It might have something to do with spring cleaning as well. I know here we've had some.
and we just got over Christmas, so people are
Yeah,
probably
we got
doing
past
more
Christmas.
stuff.
And also, we had a couple of weeks where our weather was unseasonably warm.
Yeah.
Like we had full spring weather in parts of February and early March, and we're back to like pseudo winter weather now. But hey, one thing about Michigan is as soon as the weather gets above freezing, everybody's out and doing stuff.
Everybody is
And so
alive.
maybe that had something to do with it.
It
People were
could
cleaning
be.
out because they were feeling like it because it was warm. I'm not sure, but you're right. We've found quite a few
Decent
higher value
items,
things.
and things people want, like that crate. Still can't believe how quickly that crate sold.
Yeah, we had what she's talking about, and I can throw a photo in here too. It's from Creamline Dairy that was originally in Flint, Michigan. It's like it's a sturdy metal milk crate. We had that up for
maybe
a couple of days. Yeah, maybe.
two,
Not long, and it sold.
I can't remember when that was.
So things like that we're kind of coming across, and that's cool. What areas do you think we can improve?
What areas?
Yeah.
Definitely time management.
Mm-hmm.
And probably stock. Like
Stock
organizing our
management.
Stock management.
I think I agree
It's
with
getting
that.
a little bit chaotic.
I think we're going to have to invest in some new shelving or cabinets or something because we're starting to get to that point where we have so many objects now that it's getting hard to keep track of them all.
Breakable stuff.
Yeah, we have a lot of
scared
dishes
the
and things.
breakable stuff.
Which I've talked about on here before. We do tend to sell an unusually high amount of
I don't know why.
glass and ceramics. I
One
know that
we
area, and I think I
wrote
picked that
down,
up. That's why.
Those glasses are definitely
Yeah,
a high point, which is fine.
they are, but
They're
they are
very-
breakable.
yeah.
So we're gonna have to work on that. And I think there's some other things in like ramping up and learning how to process a higher volume and doing it regularly,
Mhm.
getting scheduling. I think those are things that we could improve on for sure. But yeah, overall, I think it's been going pretty well.
Yep.
And I'm excited to see where this next year goes because that first year, of course,
Heck,
is
even the next 6 months, honestly.
Yeah. I think once you nail that first year, that's really a turning point for a lot of businesses. Like, are you gonna make it? Are you not? So, we're looking forward to the future, and we have some hopefully big plans. We've talked about going brick and mortar, and we have some longer term goals that we've been throwing around. So I'm not going to announce those now because we're not there yet. But there are definitely some things down the road that we would like to take Keeled Overstock in the direction of.
Mm-hmm.
But for now, we just want to hone our online selling. I know we've been beefing up our Etsy site as well.
And I think it's a good way to start and figure out what we want to do instead of starting out and let's say we got a booth somewhere. We're like, we don't know what we want, so let's try all this stuff out.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like we can kind of
I think too, like
focus.
I've talked
on
about this before, that first year is a good learning experience.
Yes.
So we can also learn. I've learned a lot about brands I didn't even know existed.
Yeah, I need to work on that, especially with clothing, stuff
Mhm.
like that, where we can just, find it and then hopefully sell it for decent.
Yeah.
Well, like the glasses that you've gotten, you can tell usually what's good, but I'm very, very unaware what's good stuff.
I will say you've honed in
I've
with the
been-
Riel because the last 2 times we went to a specific Salvation Army, she immediately walked back over from the glass section with Riel glasses. So, and one of the 2 sets have sold, and the other one we just
Yes.
recently purchased. So, anyway, well, let's kind of shift to our main topic, which is basically our experience as siblings in business. And as you know, working with family can be interesting.
Yeah, that's a thing.
So let's talk a little bit about the pros and cons of working with your sibling. And even though I'm sitting here, you can be honest. What do you think are some of we'll start with the positives, I guess. What are some of the pros of that?
It's a little more comfortable. I feel like I can not necessarily fight with you, but push back a little more than I could just say boss at work. Cause
Yeah, you don't have to have a level of decorum,
Yeah.
probably. And you're
And I've been
co-owner as well.
Yeah, and I've been in jobs before. I'm like, I don't want to talk to the boss because I feel like it can go very poorly very quickly.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, there's going to be fighting involved, but that's just usual.
And by fighting, she means arguments occasionally,
Yeah.
which happens with any interpersonal
Yeah.
relationship. I think sometimes when you're family, that can be an issue too. But I would rather open communication lines than
Also,
resentment. But
knowing how you're going to respond, because sometimes you don't know how other people will.
Mhm.
Like, you can read them. I can read you more often than I can other people.
yeah,
Just because I've lived with you for
a long time.
a very long time.
So what are other pros of working with a sibling as opposed to like the general public? And again, we're co-owners of this business. I think I take a lot of the lead on a lot of things. I have the most time, so I'm doing most of the sourcing, and I'm also on this YouTube channel under our name, but we are technically co-owners.
I think just being comfortable. Like, that's very important for me, is just being comfortable with you. Like, if we go somewhere and we source, I'm not going to feel weird if you're like, oh, what do you think about this? And I'm kind of like, whatever, and then vice versa. I think it's just a comfort thing personally for me.
Yeah, I think all those things, like, there's not a constant, with our business especially because we are small, there's not a lot of changing of employees, there's not a lot of office politics because we're running the business ourselves.
Not as many moving parts.
Yeah. I think those are pros. What about some cons?
Honestly, the same with just some of the pros. It's just you're always gonna.
Yeah,
But
I mean,
at some point, it's
natural, but I think sometimes we're not as under the same social rules.
Yeah.
Or you don't always follow the same social rules when you're working with your sibling as if you work with a regular coworker.
Like with my first job, well, not my first job, but the job I had in college. You were expected to be perfect in literally everything, and it's stressful. And I think it's way too distracting. And you have to deal with boss 1 and boss 2, and then boss under head boss.
Yeah,
So
the hierarchy thing.
Yeah, and I would rather just go straight to you.
Yeah.
Like
and we sort of, within certain parameters, I guess, we make our own hours too. Yes. So like when I'm working isn't necessarily when she's working. Sometimes I do ask her to do things or prioritize specific things based on what I think is going to sell, or like if we have some higher value things that I think are more desirable, I will ask her to push that to the front of the line and avoid some of our stuff that I don't think is going to be as hot selling, just because I want to get them up. But generally speaking, she might work late at night, she might work in the morning, she might work in the middle of the day. I work when I feel like it or when I have the time around the rest of my life. So I think that's the pros of working for yourself, but also like when we're in a partnership situation, we both kind of independently
do our own thing.
Yeah, but we do often tend to both end up working on Monday, at least to a certain extent, because we're both available, and sometimes it's helpful, I think, to be working at the same time.
Yes.
But we don't hold that. And so I think that's not specifically to working with your sibling, but that in a situation where you're in a partnership and not a boss-employee dynamic, that can be a benefit, I think. Can you think of any other pros and cons of working with your sibling?
I had one, then I lost it.
Okay, we'll come back. If you think of it, we'll come back to it. But I would say, like, we should also talk about how to tell if you should work with your sibling. I don't think everyone's cut out for this.
No, there are definitely some siblings where you're like, please do not be in the same room.
Yeah.
I'm with you because it's scary.
I think
you can feel the tension.
We have, for the most part, I'm the older one. We may have said this. I'm quite a bit older.
Yeah.
About 6 years older, almost exactly. And we've always gotten along pretty well, like
historically
as adults, and even into your late teens. Once we started kind of getting in to a similar level, like sometimes when there's 6 years in difference, like obviously when I was 13, you were 7, so that's a little bit of a different situation. But by the time we got older, we got along mostly pretty well, and we had similar interests, and we still do have similar interests.
That could be a pro. It's a little bit easier in some regards because we're usually on the same page. Not always, which is a good thing, because we find different things that.
I think the cons could be too that our and we talked this.
Taste can be different as well, so it's kind of like.
Yeah, I think
when you see value, I might not, but then.
Yeah, that's true.
You know.
We are different people, but I think sometimes because we often do have similar taste, not exact, but similar. I think there's that possibility that there's a gap in what we're going to notice too.
Yes.
And I think we've kind of touched on this when I've gone sourcing, say with, we talked about, I think when Joe was on here, the difference in the things that he would look at and I would look at. And the same when Clayton and I go sourcing for like a thrift haul.
Yeah, still can't get over those plaques.
Yeah, the things that he sees or picks up
Nuts.
is going to be different than me. And I think that could be a con to working with your sibling, especially in resale, is that while you may have a similar taste, and that's not always true for siblings, but if you do have a similar taste because you're related, the things you notice might be similar, and therefore there might be a gap in your collective knowledge, and I think that could be an issue.
Weird,
but so I think going back to our topic here and how to tell if you should work with your sibling, you need to consider your relationship. And like I said, we've always gotten mostly along. Nothing like no severe rifts or anything like that. We have similar hobbies, similar tastes, that kind of thing. And so that was a plus. So we knew that we could get along in that kind of capacity.
I think, I mean, we're 6 years apart, but I feel like being that close also kind of helps. I don't know how it would be if sibling one is like 10 years, 13 years. And
yeah, I can't speak to that.
Siblings, because that's a very different,
yeah,
very, very different.
And so I think another thing is
personalities as well, kind of.
Whether or not you have complementary skills too. So as it turned out, when one of the reasons that we ended up working together for Keeled Overstock is that I didn't really want to take photos and she didn't really want to write listings. Yes. And so she actually has a degree in art and I have a degree in English. And so as it turns out, our skill set are similar, they're complementary. I have a pretty long background in customer service. She has some, but I have probably more phone and email and that kind of thing. And so I tend to handle more of the customer service end of stuff. I handle most of the listings, the actual writing of the listings, and then she handles the photography part. And she's taken photography classes. She is familiar with Photoshop. I've tinkered with it, but it's by any means like my speed at doing that would not match yours. And the camera, you have a nicer camera and that kind of thing, made for photography. So we have those kind of complementary skills. And I think if you're working with family in particular, really with anybody, but especially if you're working with family, if you don't have those complementary skills and you are instead like vying and like power playing for the same roles,
it'd be really awkward.
It's gonna be hard, I think. And we were lucky that we sort of had a natural division where I didn't really want to do the photos and you didn't really want to do the listings. Right. So it worked out okay. And I think that's a big thing. So watch for how you get the general relationship, how you get along with them. Also, whether or not you have complementary skills.
Yes.
And if you don't, you might have to work a little harder to get that sorted out. Or you may have to bring in another person to help you fill in the gap where the skills are lacking. Or you'll have to learn. Either way.
Yeah, which photography really isn't that difficult. It's just mostly trying to make sure all the pictures are color matched. Because being someone that does buy stuff, a consumer, the last thing I want to do is buy an item, think it's something, and then get it, and it's just wildly different.
And photos can't do that.
So just knowing what you're doing helps.
And so I think the third piece of whether or not you should work with your sibling or a family member is the communication piece. If it's somebody that you don't think you can be honest with, or that they have an issue with honesty, I don't think it's a good fit for business. It's just that goes for everybody. Like if you cannot speak honestly to them and if they are not honest with you, then no go for business, in my opinion. No go for a lot of things, in my opinion, but especially for business. So, do you have any other advice? Any advice for new resellers? Any advice for whether you should or should not work with your sibling?
I mean, we've already kind of discussed most of that, and I think the last time I was on, talked a little bit about it, so can't really think about too much.
No advice?
Can't think of really anything.
All right. Well, thank you again for stepping in for Clayton. I'm sure he appreciates it, and I appreciate it, so we can get this episode out to you this week. Tune in next week. Hopefully Clayton will be back. If not, I will have another fill-in so that we can keep on going. But happy thrifting. Thanks for joining us again. If you enjoyed this content or any of our other videos, please like and subscribe. That helps us out and helps our channel. Have a great day. Bye.